suddenly come to feel the despair, the anguish, the profound misery which can bubble up from the depths of a sick mind. You feel it, and you don't want it. Your misery springs from the dark recesses of an unbalanced mind. You've retreated from reality into a world of delusion and dreams. In the lucid moment, you wonder if anything can be done to help you, or if you must remain this way forever.
Fortunately, something can be done these days for the mentally ill. The state of Iowa maintains 4 mental hospitals. Last week we examined 2 of them, and tonight we shall finish our tour. Let's look first tonight at the one in Cherokee. This mental health institute, is located in the northwestern section of Iowa on the outskirts of the town of Cherokee in Cherokee County on U.S. Highway 59, approximately 60 miles from Sioux City. The first patient was admitted to this institution just 50 years ago. These and other buildings now house around 1,450 patients, including some alcoholics, chiefly from the 27 counties of northwest Iowa. Like the other Iowa mental hospitals, this one at Cherokee is overcrowded and understaffed. Before I show you the films about activities of this institution, I would like you to meet Dr. Willard Brinegar, who is the superintendent of the Mental Health Institute at Cherokee. Dr. Brinegar, how long have you been in Cherokee?
About 4.5 years, sir.
I suppose in that 4.5 years you have found many problems and things to come up to give you headaches and so forth.
Yes, there are many problems in the administration of a hospital that size. However, we have no real troubles that money wouldn't cure.
I see. Well, how about your staff? How many registered nurses do you have?
We have 11 right now.
How does that compare to the other institutions of the state?
As far as I know, we have more than any of the other mental health institutes.
What about your doctors? How many of those?
There again, I believe at the present time we have more than the other mental health institutes. We have 14, including myself.
14. And, of course, another vital link in this business is the attendance. How many attendants do you have?
Right now we have about 190.
And how does that compare to the others?
There again, I believe it's a few more than any of the others right at present.
Well, I come up now with the natural question. If you have more nurses and more doctors and all that than the others, what are your problems?
We have more than some of the others, but still, some of our personnel are entirely inadequate for the problem we have.
Is there any standard of how many you should have? You say they're inadequate.
Yes, the American Psychiatric Association sets up standards for hospitals of this type.
How many nurses should you have?
According to the minimum standards of the American Psychiatric Association, a hospital the size of ours should have 156 registered nurses.
How about doctors?
31.
31 doctors. That's an attendance.
About 500.
500 doctors. And you have...
No, 500 attendants.
500 attendants. And you have how many?
190.
190. What is the problem here then? Are doctors and attendants and nurses hard to find?
Yes. They're hard to find. However, we have surplus of applications at the present time. Our problem is finding the money to pay them and places to house them.
More attendants are available if you could pay them, if you had the money to pay them. This is the question of they want more money than you're willing to pay, or you just don't have the money to hire any more?
Both. At the present time, we do have quite a few applicants who are willing to work for the salary schedule.
Well, are you then able to do anything beyond just the normal care of these patients?
A little, but not nearly as much as we would like to. We're able to do some research work. We've done quite a little psychosurgery. We do quite a little active treatment. We can do very little psychotherapy, which is one of the most important things that a mental hospital should do because it's so time-consuming. To do adequate psychotherapy for one patient takes about an hour a day of the doctor's time. And with 1,350 patients, and only 3 or 4 doctors who are trained in psychotherapy, it's obvious that only very few can receive the benefits of this type of treatment.
We have some films which we're going to show you tonight about your institution. I'm always interested in the fact that when you have more people than some of the other institutions, you're still inadequately staffed.
Well, some certainly submit that.
So I think the people can realize then what the problems are with the other institutions. I'd like to remind you that these institutions that we're talking about, although we talk about them one at a time, their problems are generally the same in most respects. Thank you, Mr. Brininger. And I'd like to show the people some of the motion pictures I took at Cherokee with your permission and cooperation. When a person comes to a hospital as an outpatient or voluntary inpatient, or only is committed, certain admission procedures are necessary. I believe at Cherokee it is necessary before a voluntary patient can be admitted for him to have been there as an outpatient. Here we see Dr. Weininger, who is the assistant superintendent, getting some of the necessary papers for a voluntary patient or an outpatient to receive treatment at the place. In other words, permissions must be obtained, and there are some charges that are necessary before these things can go about. Of course, they don't turn anyone away because if they can't pay, but if they are able to pay, they do. Here they meet before the staff of doctors to help with diagnosis. I have a picture here of electrotherapy. I show you the entire thing here as a matter of comparison. You know that this patient, although she's being treated, after the electric shock has been introduced, which is harmless as far as permanent is concerned, she goes into certain convulsions. Now, as you can see from the shaking there, and these patients do have momentary periods of soreness in the muscles. This machine that you see now is a new machine which has been developed at Cherokee. I once again show you the entire shock treatment so that you can tell there are no convulsions. There is a contraction of all muscles during a very brief period. There are not as many attendants necessary as in the other method. This machine has been in use about 3 months, but up to now, apparently the results of this method are exactly the same as with the other methods, and you can see much less trouble than the other kind. Another type of treatment that is given here in extreme cases is what is known as lobotomy. Now, a lobotomy is an operation to the prefrontal lobe of the brain, roughly this area of the brain. One more common type of lobotomy is known as the transorbital, in which the instrument goes in past the eye, not damaging the eye in any way, but just goes in past the eye. I have some films here which will show you some of these, and if surgical pictures bother you, don't look. Now, we have, let's say that seriously, you'll notice that there's an instrument that resembles a little bit an ice pick, which goes in and it covers certain designated portions of the prefrontal area of the brain. One of the purposes is to separate the emotions from thinking. This can cure or relieve some of the symptoms of mental illness. Now, sometimes this transorbital lobotomy, which is a very precise operation, sometimes it is not successful. And so we have the other type, which is known as the prefrontal lobotomy. It is a full-scale surgical operation, psychosurgery once again, and they remove portions of the brain, portions of the skull, and go into the brain that way when the transorbital didn't work. Now, the machine you are now looking at is an electroencephalograph. This is for reading the brain waves. You'll notice the patient sitting there, he has certain electrodes on his head. And those electrodes are connected to this machine, which will record the brain waves from each of the areas where the pictures are shown. You'll notice here the recording going across the screen. Now, there's frequencies and heights of these things, and the general pattern will tell an experienced doctor just exactly what the trouble is. Now we are going into radioactivity. This woman, this nurse, is looking around the laboratory to be sure that there is no spare radioactivity. Stray, I should say, radioactivity. And then with the aid of a Geiger counter, which measures the amount of radioactivity, they will go over the brain of a person who has been fed certain radioactive iodine. This iodine will center in certain tumors or scar tissue of the brain, and you can see here the Geiger counter, which is counting madly, which would indicate when the counter was in a certain place that that is where the tumor was located, of course, or scar tissue, as the case might be. This is a more advanced method. It's more or less experimental, but it is workable and has been proven to a general degree. Now, there are other things, of course, that a patient needs who is in a mental hospital. He has needs just like you and I. He must eat, and he has medical needs, and he has toothache, and that sort of thing. Here we see a dentist working on the patient, and then we get into some music therapy. These patients love to sing, and this fulfills one of their needs just as you and I. That is a therapy too. Beauty treatment has been found to be a great help to these mental patients. Of course, there always comes a great day. When I was there at Cherokee, I found a patient who was ready to leave. It's the man there, and his wife came after him. They were both very, very happy at the opportunity to finally be going home. One of the very important people in a mental hospital is the attendant. I thought you would be interested in talking with an attendant in the ward, and so I brought to the studio tonight Mrs. Blanche Smith, who is a ward attendant at Mount Pleasant Mental Hospital. Mrs. Smith, how long have you been there?
Well, I've been there about 12 years altogether, although I came 25 years ago, but I haven't worked there continuously.
I see. Well, I think the first question that people would want to know is, what is it like to work in a mental ward?
Well, at first you hardly know what to do, and then you get so interested in your patients that you want to do what you can for them, and you get immersed in your work. And it's just like any other job. You just do what you can from day to day for them all.
Have you worked in most all types of wards?
Yes, I have. I've worked in every ward at the Mental Health Institute at Mount Pleasant.
What about the so-called disturbed or violent wards? Have you worked there?
Yes, I have.
What is that like? You have trouble with
Well,
patients?
yes. Sometimes everything runs smoothly, and then again, you have flare-ups. And, of course, you have to deal with these just the best way you can. As you get to know your patients, you know how to handle them. And you can help a lot by just knowing your patient. And, of course, the main thing is to get them in seclusion so they can not harm themselves or anyone else. And then they soon get all that.
Are you able to tell sometimes in advance?
Yes. When you know your patient well, sometimes you can tell when a patient is getting worked up, and you can avoid a very bad flare-up by beginning treatment in time.
In other words, your job is very important to the correct treatment of these people. You tell the doctor sometimes how you felt or what you could observe?
Yes, the doctor depends quite a bit on what we tell him, because we live with the patient so many hours a day, and they know we understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, in the number of years you've been working there, you must have seen some changes.
Yes, a good many of them.
Could you give us an example of any kind?
Well, I think the main change has been in the attitude of the public toward mental illness. I used to, it was kind of a hush-hush business. Now they recognize it as an illness just like any other illness, and it is treated as such.
Do you think that the change of attitude of the public has been a help to the patients themselves?
Yes, it has. And then, of course, we have advancement in medicine in the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen a difference in the conditions?
Yes. We have more occupational therapy, which is a very good thing for the patient. If a patient is kept busy, that helps a lot. We try to avoid these vacant stares and just sit in with nothing to do.
In other words, you try to keep them busy and keep them doing
That's
something.
right, something constructive.
Does that help them to recover?
Yes, it does. It takes the mind off of themselves and gives them an interest outside themselves.
You must see more patients going out improved or cured now than you did.
Oh, there's many more than many years ago. That's right.
Well, that is encouraging from all of the things that we know. As I told you, Mrs. Smith, and thank you very much, Mrs. Smith, for coming in and talking with us. Mrs. Smith is from the Mental Health Institute at Mount Pleasant. The Mount Pleasant institution is located in the southeastern corner of Iowa, in the city of Mount Pleasant, which is in Henry County on U.S. Highway 44, about 28 miles from Burlington, Iowa. This is the oldest of the state mental hospitals, although this middle portion burned out some years back and has been replaced by a new fireproof structure. The first patient was admitted here on February 27, 1861. This institution now houses about 1,430 patients. This is a new building here, you see, that hasn't been occupied yet. Patients come here from the 24 counties of southeastern Iowa, which incidentally includes Cherokee County, right here that Ames, the county that Ames is in. We want to show you first and tell you about the activities of the ward attendant. Her job, as you see here, is the giving of medication on the doctor's orders. And of course, when her day's work is finished, she is relieved by another attendant. Many of these attendants are registered practical nurses. This attendant you may recognize as Mrs. Smith, whom we just talked to. She sits down, she checks with the other attendant, and the very first thing that happens, some of the patients on the ward come in to try to see what they can get out of the first attendant. In that case, trying to get a smoke. So we check the records and see what must be done next. Making beds and all types of ward activities are a very important part. Here Mrs. Smith is helped by a patient. Many of the better patients can work through the wards. Now, all patients there are not bed patients. These films were made in the admissions ward at Mount Pleasant, for newly admitted patients are always kept in bed for a short period of time for observation and so forth. When you multiply this by many, many patients, even the admission ward, you can see that an attendant is quite busy. And of course, the new patient, another part of the new patient's routine when she comes in is blood type and other laboratory tests. All these things help tell the physical condition of the patient, while other tests are taken, psychological and otherwise, to tell the mental condition. Many laboratory tests, and of course visits by the doctor. Many questions, many things need to be answered. The chaplain comes in, talks and tries to comfort the new patient. This is a very important period with many new patients. People coming into the room, but sometimes they bring food. At first, of course, the patient would eat in bed, or some patients are sick enough to eat in bed. But of course, on many of the wards, they have their own dining room. When they do have their own dining room, the food is brought up into a kitchen from a central kitchen, into a serving kitchen, where many patients help. Here you see the patients helping Mrs. Smith. Bring these things out from the dumb waiter and put them onto dishes which are put through the window there and served into the dining hall. There's many, many meals throughout the hospital. Of course, there are always the bed patients who have a tray taken to them. Family style here, with Mrs. Smith always around to help. You can see that the hours spent in a day are not exactly leisure hours. The attendant fits in many ways and many activities. For instance, the electroshock that we told you about is given with the aid of the ward attendant. Electroshock is given in many forms, as we told you before, and of course this is a conventional machine. The preparation is put on the temples, which will make a good contact. And then these calipers type things are put on the temples, and a gag is put in the mouth for the protection of the patient, keep them from biting their tongue or doing damage to themselves. Then they're taken out after this, and usually they're in a rather sound sleep. This is a view of the rather small machine. Mr. Smith talked about occupational therapy. Now, there's a regular occupational therapy department at Mount Pleasant as at the other hospitals, and they do many things, making dresses and the like. To keep them busy, to teach them. You'll notice this man only has one arm, yet he can take very good care of himself. This man is an artist. They leave the ward and go out there, but of course, back in the ward, the attendant helps keep the patients busy, trying to keep their minds occupied and their time occupied. And the coordinator of these and all other activities of the institution is the superintendent. I would like you to meet Dr. Wayne Brown, who is the acting superintendent of the Mount Pleasant Hospital. Dr. Brown, I was looking at these pictures and I saw some very nice private rooms there and lots of attention to the patients. Could it be that you don't have any trouble?
We have many troubles at Mount Pleasant. The ward that these rooms were taken on is a receiving ward, and we there find the accommodations better than in other parts of the hospital. We do have dormitories for many patients sleep together, and incidentally, this receiving ward was something that was recently fixed up and modernized to a certain degree.
I see. Was that out of this extra fund, the screening center funds that I've heard about?
Yes, it could not have been done out of our regular funds. It was done with special screening center funds.
What about the rest of your institution then? Is it overcrowded?
The institution is very overcrowded. It's very old. It hadn't started over 81 years ago, and all of the buildings housing patients, with the exception of one, has been outdated many years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about your attendant problem? I centered on the work of the attendant, and I believe the people realize it's a very important job.
The attendance situation at Mount Pleasant is rather critical. At the present time, I only have about 155 attendants.
155 for, about 1,400?
About 1,430 patients.
Mm-hmm. Well, what happens if you run out of attendants?
Well, we've never exactly run out completely, but we've been so close to it. And we have so many wards to cover, 24 hours a day, that it is necessary for us to oftentimes have one attendant in charge of 2 wards, or sometimes even more than that.
Now, how many people are in a ward?
The number in the ward is anywhere from about 25 on up to 60.
So if you had one attendant for 2 wards, that could be up to about 100 patients that the one attendant wouldn't have to take care of.
Yes, at times they do take 75 or more patients.
These people need a lot of special attention and so forth.
They do require a great deal of attention, and we would like to give them more attention and care than we're able to do at times under the circumstances.
Well, I hate to burn up the situation with the people and then just leave it hang there. Why are you so short of attendance and other workers?
Well, it seems that we cannot employ a sufficient number of attendants at the amount of salary that I'm able to offer them, and many of those who come will only work for a very short period at that salary and then go elsewhere where they can get more money.
Your only solution is more money?
Well, that's not the only solution. I think it's an important factor, and one that
would help us a good deal if there were more adequate funds provided.
In the case of money, if you were to put your institution, knowing your own problems there, in the next period that comes up, how much more money would you say it would take to put on adequate basis?
I think, really give the care, the patients the care that they deserve and that we would like to give them. I think that we should have in the neighborhood of 70% more money than we've been getting in the past.
A 70% increase then on the time, on the amount of money that is spent. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Brown. I appreciate your frankness in talking about these problems because we have shown the 4 mental hospitals. We've shown that lots of treatment is done. I continue to think that it's very important that the public know that everything we show on this program is not, the things we show in this program are not everything about the institution. I've considered that the patient and what was being done for him was important and tried to center on that, but I also like you to know that there are many, many problems that we cannot bring out here, and you can realize that. Well, I have a patient here tonight from Mount Pleasant who would like to sing for you. And so now, let's lean back and listen to a very beautiful song, When Irish Eyes Are Smiling.
The worst sin towards our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That's the essence of inhumanity. This has been a public service feature produced in the studios of WOI-TV Ames, Iowa by Ray Stewart. The program was directed by Lamar Smith. Script for In Our Affairs prepared by Hazel Holland, with production research by Fern Bonamy. The technical director was Charles Hawley. Portions of the program were on film.